right. Well, welcome. Happy Monday. Hope everybody survived the holiday weekend. I guess we have New Year's to get through, and then we'll be on to 2021 for most of us. Hopefully a better year, I think. I think we can look forward to that. Ashley, I was reading a little bit about your background. So you've lost 60 plus pounds or so on a keto and carnivore diet. So first of all, congratulations on that. I'm sure that must feel good and must be a relief. Where are you from? I know you're not from New York. You don't have a Boston accent.
No, I don't. I'm actually born and raised in Statesville, which is the same hometown as Kelly Hogan. She was on a little bit, I think, last.
Yeah, sure, of course, no, Kelly, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. We've both lived in Statesville our entire lives, but we didn't actually meet and lock eyes and have a conversation until last January with one another. But yeah, it's a small world. Carnivores are in every little nook and cranny, it seems, in hometown.
Yeah, we are starting to multiply. We're like a fungus or a plague or something like that. We just keep growing, huh?
Yeah.
Which is good. I think that's a good thing. That's awesome. So North Carolina, you grew up there, I'm guessing, or perhaps maybe not?
Yep. Born and raised in the same hometown. Married to my high school sweetheart, very similar to Kelly. Mother of two. I have two little girls, 8 and 3, who are wild. And, but yeah.
That's what they're supposed to be wild, I think. Yeah, I've got 4 of them right now. 8, 10, 12, 14 running around. My little 8-year-old's having a piano lesson right now. So if you guys hear any piano in the background, hopefully it's not coming through. I can hear it, but that's what's going on. Well, tell us a little bit. So what's your background? So what made you decide to go keto and then carnivore, and what was life like, whatever, 5 years ago or however far back you want to go?
Sure. So I'm going to condense it. I was on a recent podcast and I think I talked for 45 minutes about a 7-year journey. So I'm going to go real quick. So I grew up playing every sport under the sun. I was always very active, but I could also eat whatever I wanted. And going into my freshman year of high school, my parents were getting divorced. And that stopped all sports activity because neither one of them wanted to pay for any sports anymore. Also, they were kind of done being parents. And so that means that they didn't really want to take care of meals or provide. And that kind of started my journey of really bad eating habits because I just ate whatever I could find. I even took a foods and nutrition class when I was in high school because it was a class where you could eat. Because I couldn't always afford lunch. And there was a stigma I felt around being in the free lunch line of if I'm on that list, someone will know that, I'm going through this, and I'd rather go through it silently and struggle through it than announce it to the world what's happening. So I would eat whatever was available in what, Slim Fast bars. Oh God. I cringe now to think about what I would eat. But there would be days where I wouldn't eat at all, or there would be days when I would find something available, I would binge. And so I had a very disordered eating pattern of a lot of shame and guilt, and the fact that I wasn't an adult and didn't know how to take care of myself, but I was forced in that situation. And so when you're starving, I think it was a lot of emotional eating that would happen. So I wound up gaining a lot of weight with my first pregnancy. And I delivered at 234 pounds. I'm on a 5'8" frame. And so now at 5'8", I can handle a little bit more weight than someone on a smaller frame. And I'd always had a very muscular body before from playing every single sport. But over that, 7-year period of going through high school and having bad eating behaviors, and then trying to lose in every poor decision of diet possible, where I was doing more caloric deficit, and it was that whole calorie in, calorie out, which drives me insane. Because, 100 calories of an Oreo cookie snack bag versus 100 calories of a meat, they are not equal. They do not give you the same amount of energy, and they don't sustain your body. And so trying to learn that, there wasn't anyone teaching that in 2002, not really for me. So I had to try and find ways of providing and feeding myself, and even going through pregnancy. The list of foods that they give you is horrendous. They basically were, I'm surprised I didn't have gestational diabetes based off of the food list that they give you for pregnant women. Like, you need to be eating, lots of carbs and lots of fruits, and like there wasn't enough information there about meat. It was basically like they were almost promoting vegan diets in a way during pregnancy, which I found so odd. But that was the pregnancy that I had for my first experience. And when I delivered my oldest, at 234 pounds, I also went through a really tough time dealing with postpartum depression. And I wasn't healthy for her. I wasn't healthy for myself. And I had a lot of hatred about my body. And I knew I wasn't taking care of myself. And I literally did a deep dive over the course of a week and a half on Pinterest, like looking at what are some ways that I can financially make good decisions for me. What's going to help me produce breast milk? What's going to help me have more energy? What's going to be better for the both of us? And so on that journey, I found keto. And at that time, it wasn't even called keto. It was just low carb, high fat, or just low carb. And so I literally just took into account, what does that food list look like? And what are the foods that I know I can handle or I want to try and interact with? And that really was the start of my journey. Was 2000, probably the summer of 2013 was when I started that. And it was originally to try and help heal my body from postpartum and to heal the depression that I was going through. And carbs were not helping the depression, but that's how it started.
Yeah, just a couple comments on that. I'll reflect on some of my stuff that, I remember high school, gosh, I don't remember much about nutrition, particularly in the school lunch lines. I do remember as an athlete, we would always go through twice. I think they let us go through twice to get roast over rice was my favorite for some reason. But they, I think the extent of my thoughts on what was a healthy diet, I used to eat Yoplait yogurt a whole bunch because I remember there was a commercial about these Russians that lived to be a long time eating, I think maybe it was Dannon yogurt. But anyway, that gave me the reason to eat yogurt, and I'd eat 10 or 12 of these yogurt cartons at a time. I particularly like the lemon and the orange, but obviously those were full of sugar and all this stuff that I had no comprehension of back then. And then it's kind of interesting when you're pregnant. We've got there's a lot of obviously development going on, a lot of neurologic development, brain development, central nervous system development. And, as we know, the central nervous system is by and large made up of quite a lot of fat, cholesterol, and other fats. And so when we were significantly restrict that during our pregnancy, I think, to the point where there may be some impacts on it. I think it is concerning that we don't encourage fat. I mean, there's talk about fish oil a little bit around pregnancy, or there was it that may have, I don't know if it's still in vogue or not, but a lot of women are often, because, the typical healthy pregnancy, you're going to gain, depending on your height, 20, 25 pounds, maybe 30 at the outset. If you're starting out heavier, it doesn't help you gaining more. And a lot of women go on a starvation diet during pregnancy to avoid gaining weight. And I think that also has its detriments. But, you're talking about carbs and depression and calories in, calories out. And I think the physics behind that is not necessarily completely invalid. I mean, it's there is a point where calories do impact us, and even on a carnivore diet, there's a point when you can overeat. But I think the where it falls down miserably for most people, it doesn't say anything about appetite regulation. If we just say every human being gets to eat 2,000 calories, and we're even going to be nice enough to say we're going to nutritionally balance it and give you enough protein, there's very few percentage of people that can actually do that. I mean, in practicality, and that's what we're seeing. Unless the exceptions to that is when the food availability is low, then you can do that. You look at countries like most of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, where everybody's malnourished because there's not enough food availability. In some parts of Asia, same sort of situation, or there's a cultural pressure for that. But given unlimited food choices and the human psyche and the desire for energy and the fact that it's freely available, telling somebody, how long have calories counts been available on nutrition labels? I mean, forever. I mean, it's not like we haven't been able to read these and see, hey, look, I'm eating too many calories. Or even if we are, we're still going to do it anyway. Even if we could control ourselves and say, I'm going to stop at X amount of food and I don't care if I'm hungry. If you look at animals in the wild, they are not saying, I've exceeded my caloric consumption for the day, I better shut it down. And I would argue they're eating the appropriate food for their species, and therefore they are in balance with what their needs are and what their appetite, puts them at. Rarely do you see a lion pushing away from a carcass saying, "Oh, I've had my 4,000 calories. I got to shut it down." Doesn't happen. So, all right. So, what was so you Pinterest? Now, I know some people would snicker at that. I mean, I got made fun of for saying that I saw people doing a zero carb diet on Facebook, and I said, "Look, you get your information where you get it from." And, just because it hasn't been come down off the mountaintops anointed by some guy in a white coat doesn't mean it's not necessarily helpful. And in fact, a lot of people help each other. This is how knowledge had been shared and passed down for ages. And some people say, well, that's not very scientific. Well, at the end of the day, if something works, it works. And that's all I really care about is results. So when you made the transition, I'm sure you've had a lot of obviously changes over time. You found things that worked and some things that didn't. I mean, there's the ketogenic approach can be wonderful for many people. It can be a disaster for others, depending upon how you do that. What did your journey, when did you was there an aha moment where like, wow, this is different? I mean, I know for me, I had this, I'm not hungry moment. That was kind of weird for me because I was always, as a big guy, I exercised, I was constantly eating. I was eating my day was a continuous stream of eating. Mm-hmm. Interrupted by activity. If I was busy, I couldn't eat. But as soon as I wasn't busy, man, I damn well better believe I was eating. So what happened? Tell me about when you switched gears a little bit.
The aha moment for me was when I've always suffered with allergies. I've always suffered with abnormal hip sockets. So I had a lot of joint pain, and that didn't start to materialize or rear its ugly head until I was overweight. You're just born with abnormal hip sockets, and years and years and years of overusing it and making it overactive when I was an athlete was not a problem until I had a deterioration of muscle mass and I was having zero activity level and I was just gaining weight. That was when all of that pressure was then added to my joints and making that hard for me. When I started the ketogenic diet and pulled out a lot of the carbohydrates, I noticed that the inflammation was disappearing and it wasn't as painful to walk. It wasn't painful for me to be in the car and drive for long periods of time because I was in sales. I would drive to different destinations and work with different people. That was no longer a problem for me to sit there. And I also noticed that if I ate certain vegetables, I would still have problems. I would have digestive issues. I realized that I am sensitive to nightshades. I'm sensitive to sulfur vegetables. I can't handle your broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, which is like keto heaven. Those are the vegetables that are there. And that's kind of what pushed me into carnivore. I noticed that I did a kind of a standard American diet. And then I started doing a beginner style ketogenic. And I did the beginner style ketogenic diet in a way that I tried very hard not to do all the desserts, not to do the fat bombs that gets everyone in trouble. It's like, you don't need the fat bombs if you still have fat on you. Like, stop adding all the fat. That's a hard thing that can get you kind of tricked in the beginning. And then I started doing more of a ketovore approach where I was 90% meat and I might have, the other 10% was vegetables. And then I realized that the vegetables weren't doing anything for me. They were just roughage. And so, the clicking was, I no longer had really terrible allergies. I wasn't going through situations where I was sick multiple times a year. And to be honest, when I started carnivore last January, I've not been sick this entire year, which is an amazing thing to say. I've not had any situation in which I've had to take an antibiotic whatsoever, and which is odd because the 2 years previously I suffered with pneumonia. At 33 and 34, that's not normal for you to get pneumonia 2 years in a row. Like it's odd. But this year I had absolutely zero medical issues, zero sickness. The only time I ever noticed that I had a tickle or anything behind my throat was whenever I had too much dairy in a day and I could feel the phlegm build up. That was it. So the aha moment for me was every single day in which I took the step or the journey, I could see like a shedding of inflammation come off. And so it was, if I think about it in like a Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, it was like a color from the coat was coming off every single day. I could just feel it shedding off. And that was the aha. And it wasn't even a choice anymore after that. It was just, I'm going to continue to eat in this way because I continue to feel better in this way. And the way that I was doing before, regardless of what the reason was, if it was easy or if it was financially available or it was what, was happening socially in my sphere, I still was going to try and, eat this way. And my husband wound up joining along with me. I wound up having a keto pregnancy, which was very successful. And what's so crazy now to think about this, and I don't know that there's any studies about this, but my first pregnancy, my first daughter, she actually had a lot more cavities, whereas my 3-year-old, who was a keto diet and way more meat-based, does not have any. So like her growth and development inside the womb and my food and what I was eating and what she was drawn to versus the second pregnancy, it actually did materialize in her actual dental health as well. So that's just something that I have noticed from my own family, from my own, observations between those two changes and the differences of those pregnancies and the health of my two children.
Yeah, there are a number of associational studies looking at pregnancy and typical, and certainly things that occur during pregnancy and how they impact children even in their teens and stuff. So there's definitely. I'm not sure if there's stuff on dental health or might be. I haven't looked at it, but I wouldn't be surprised. And clearly for the people that say sugar is harmless if it's eaten isocalorically, I'm just going to say rot your teeth. I don't care how many. It clearly. If nothing else. If you say, well, it's only a problem in excessive calorie or calorie excess, and again, we had Gary Taubes in there, and that's a very tautological argument. What means too much? Too much means you've got damage. Well, what's that level? Is it 10 grams? Is it 50 grams? Is it WHO? No more than 15 grams a day or whatever. I can't remember the number. I think that's their number right now. But so you've got this, this clear difference, and we do see these intergenerations. That's why it seems that obesity is genetic. But probably what we're seeing is some epigenetic, modifications occurring in utero from a mom that's, very much glucose based and running high levels of insulin all the time. There's probably evidence that does affect the neonate, and the babies are born basically, more glucose or insulin dependent than others might be. And therefore, and then you immediately, if you don't breastfeed them, you put them on a formula, which is often corn syrup, soybean oil, and some other garbage. That's unfortunately what the stuff is. And then they go on to rice cereal and fruit gummies and all that kind. And my kids got some of that stuff too. And this is back in the days before I really knew what was what. But that's just the way it is. And so we get these kids that don't have a deal. One of the points you make that I think is really important to touch on. I'm glad you're here because sort of academics, and I kind of sort of put myself in there because I don't, a lot of people say I'm very non-academic, but I've got a obviously traditional background in medical education, but there's a lot of people that, it's, we can say this and this and that and eat the rainbow and eat the fruits and eat the organic stuff and eat the grass-fed meat, but it really is not a financial reality for a lot of people, and not just in the U.S. And the U.S. is a relatively wealthy country. If you go, you try to do this in friggin', Bangladesh or, Sierra Leone or, anywhere around the world. You're like, gosh, just get what you can get. And if you get some eggs and some chicken, how are you at a point where is the financial aspect of it still very important to you? Is that something, you got to feed a family, you got to, you obviously feed yourself. Like I said, some of us are more fortunate that we have income and food is not an issue, but what are your thoughts on the financial aspects?
I would say that, carnivore now, I don't think it's less expensive or more expensive unless we get into that conversation about organic, grass-fed, anointed cow eating. It's one of those situations where I feel like if I do the same, where I don't have an In-N-Out burger, but if it's Wendy's or if it's McDonald's and they're plain, I feel like I'm going to get yelled at because it's not the cleanest, but it winds up being, what's available and what's an opportunity. I think that there is a drastic financial implication on one side of carnivore versus a drastic financial implication on keto, where you're doing every single ingredient under the sun that allows you to make tons and tons of casseroles. I think what works for me and what works for my family is to shop locally, to shop sales on meat that I can find and what works best, whether it's ground beef or it is chicken. Always winds up being really inexpensive, but it also is not the best bang for my buck because it makes me feel hungrier later, even if it is chicken thighs. It just doesn't give me as much energy. My children eat low carb, so they will still have some fruits and some veggies. My husband is ketovore and I'm carnivore. So it's one of those situations where our cart, when we go grocery shopping, is 75% meat. Everything in there is going to be an animal product. And then anything after that is going to be, maybe cauliflower rice for my husband. And my girls love cheese. It depends on what it is. But I have found financially that a blended low carb ketovore carnivore household is not unaffordable. It is something that can be done. I find that it's one of those risk reward or payoff where, would I be less healthy if I ate other foods that were less expensive, that were shelf stable, and then I was overweight again and was sick again and had an increase of medical issues, that kind of thing. I think about it in those regards, that I am trying to teach my girls what they should eat, what makes them feel better. What's crazy is that I made a smoothie for my oldest the other day. And I say the other day as in like it was last week, but it was probably 6 months ago. I made one during the summer and it was all different types of, berries. And within 25 minutes of finishing that, she was insane. And it literally was just all the natural sugar in the fruit. Like her behavior was horrible. Her behavior was as bad as if she had had a cupcake. So I'm like, even natural sugar is just as bad as, manufactured sugar in a cupcake. The way that she responded in it was not good for her. So I try very hard to limit it. But I'm also not trying to give them a complex and make them feel like they have to watch absolutely everything they eat. So I have to be conscious of that because my mother, my entire childhood until they separated was constantly on a diet, and it was always cottage cheese and a grapefruit. And I have no idea that was always like the combination of the perfect diet. I think it's because together they're both disgusting and you don't want to eat. So you just lose weight. I have no idea, but it was atrocious. So I'm trying very hard as an adult woman to say, like, if I'm just not eating, if I say I'm fasting, then I explain what that means. I'm like, I'm just not hungry yet. It's not that I'm forcing myself not to eat. I'm just not there yet. If you're hungry, that's fine. But if you ate 2 hours ago, I don't think you're truly hungry. Let's figure out are you bored? Can we go do something? Like that. Can we get your mind off of it so you're not just sitting and snacking?
Yeah, I think that's a great little story there. And, my kids similar, and I do the shopping for the family. So sometimes I'm at the store and I'm in there buying my meat and then I'm throwing in some raspberries and stuff. And I'm worried somebody's going to see me and say, hey, that's not carnivore. And I'm like, I'm shocked. It doesn't matter regardless. If I eat a raspberry, I don't care less anyway, but I buy for the whole family and they do a mixture, kind of similar to what you do. My better half does probably 90 to 95% carnivore. My kids are probably, every meal is meat heavy, eggs, they do dairy, they'll have some fruit. They don't ask for vegetables, and I don't feel compelled to give them to them. So I'm fine with them just getting, whatever they want with some, as long as they get enough nutrition in there. The thing about, and it's important with the kids, my kids are, I hope they're in no danger of veganism. I hope I've imported that message in them that meat is essential and healthy and that type of stuff. But it's great to set the example. The analogy, the examples you gave of the cottage cheese and the grapefruit. Yeah, I find both of those things awful. I never liked cottage cheese and I never liked grapefruit. I thought it was super sour and just didn't enjoy it. And that's just that low fat thing. Cottage cheese is basically a low fat dairy product with, another low fat item. And that was highly unsatisfying. Food is going to leave you hungry constantly. You touched on, mental health and depression. And I think that's something that, or children's behavior, really anyone's behavior. And this is another thing where we don't talk about. Well, we do, but it's not really talked about much in the mainstream. But Chris Palmer, others, George Eden, some of the other psychiatrists that at least are willing to talk about nutrition and mental health and mental behavior, mood and all that stuff. It's pretty clear And anybody that's been on a carnivore diet, with rare exception, will notice that there's an evening out of their, I think, their emotional state, and it's not that you're flat, you've got a completely flat affect, but I think you're in more control. I mean, I think it's kind of like looking at a blood sugar monitor, a blood sugar tracing on a CGM, it's up and down within a range, but you don't have this. And, when you're perhaps eating a different diet, your mood is at blood glucose 200 and then back down to blood glucose 50 or whatever. And it's just up and down, up and down. And so, do you find that, what do you struggle with still? Do you still find a lot of struggles with things? I mean, do you have issues where you're struggling with the diet or any other aspect of the lifestyle?
I do still struggle with certain things. I'm not going to lie about that. It's one of those situations where I did, after 30, was it 30 days or 90 days? I did a 90-day update, I think, with Kelly Hogan, and in which I said that I gained weight on carnivore, and she did too. And I don't think that's abnormal. I would say that for me, the struggle that I have is actually understanding true hunger signals. Because I don't think growing up I ever allowed myself to truly feel hungry. And I don't know if it was from that voice as a child. If you don't eat all your, you need to clean your plate. If you don't eat all of your food, then you won't get anything else to eat, until the next day. And I don't know if it was a fear embedded of a scarcity in which you felt like you had to eat. I don't know if it's, we have indoctrinated ourselves into, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, regardless of what day it is, or if you're even hungry, and it drives me nuts. And now we have brunch, and then we have supper, and then there's it's ridiculous.
It's kind of like a Hobbit. I don't know if you're familiar with the Lord of the Rings, where they're having 10 meals a day or something like second breakfast.
Yeah, second breakfast. It's ridiculous. And I feel like sometimes my youngest will have second breakfast almost, and because she just gets up earlier, so she winds up wanting something else to eat later, still mid-morning, but she just gets up so much earlier than everyone else. It just kind of happens. But I would say that my struggle is, really understanding my true hunger. Because, the carnivore way of just trying to eat when you're truly hungry, and that's hard when you've not really practiced it. And I know that just sounds so weird. But it's like, if I use the word fasting, and it's such a bad word sometimes in the carnivore world to say fasting, because they're like, we don't do a forced fast. You just eat when you're hungry. And I'm like, I know, but it's one of those things, if I don't push myself as a goal, I'm a very goal-oriented individual coming from a sports background. Wherever the goalpost was, that was the point. So with a fast, I feel like if you go in, if you use an app or whatever, if you just track, if this is my time, I'm going to set a goal of not eating before 1 p.m., then that technically is forcing to not eat until that point. But I'm trying very hard not to see it that way. And I'm also having the situation where I'm like, you know what? I don't care if you have a problem with the word fast anymore. If that's how I need to heal myself, that's what I'm going to do. I'm definitely not a proponent of telling everyone that they should do my method of carnivore or my method of this way of eating. But the struggle that I have is actually feeling true hunger. I did a 72-hour fast, and I did it recently. And I only did it because I had never done one before. I think my longest one before that was 44 hours. And so when I hit to 72 and I was doing a live, I actually felt okay. I felt really good. I wasn't actually hungry, but it was one of those situations where I had prepared and planned to eat at that point with my family. And that is what broke the fast. I had gone grocery shopping. I had planned, but I still wasn't truly hungry. And so now I'm like, okay, well, how long could I go? I don't know. That's what I struggle with. And I know so many people still struggle with that, of trying to actually feel hunger.
Yeah, it can be. And one of the issues a lot of people have is they end up under eating, when they go to carnivore. Many, not all, but many do. And they end up, they say, I just don't feel hungry. And then they say, well, I don't have any energy. And it's, it's one of those things where, you have to kind of force the food for a little while for some people, not everybody. I know I've got my oldest son, he's 14, he's 6'1", maybe 6'2". he weighs 123 pounds. I mean, he's a beanpole. I mean, that reminds me of that's about, I was about that size when I was his age. I was a little bit heavier. I think I was 140 at 6'1". I was super stringy, tall, skinny kid, and he's autistic as well. So it makes it a little bit more of a challenge to get him to eat, but he will eat certain foods, and he'll eat a lot of them. So I'm just like, go for it, man. It's been, since he's been here, it's been sausage, it's been milk, it's been apples, and he's eating some croissants. And so I just eat. You just eat. My daughters are complaining because he's eating all the food. I'm like, let him eat. I've got him for a couple of weeks, over the holidays. I'm like, my goal is to put 5 pounds on him. But yeah, so hunger can be a tricky thing. And the fasting, whether it's intentional or physiologic, or, you're sitting there with your stopwatch. I don't really get too excited about either of those. I think there's, again, I'll point back to the looking at every other species, and when they eat, when they don't, it's usually when they're hungry. And, hunger can be something that is, well, you talked about emotional eating, you went through, your parents divorced, and, it kind of is, obviously can be very, emotionally distressing to anyone. When my parents divorced when I was a kid, although I was a little bit older, I went through a divorce. My kids were affected. I mean, it does cause that. And it's not that emotions go away when you switch to a carnivore diet. It's not that traumatic life events stop occurring. So do you find better prepared mentally with a different dietary strategy when things don't go well?
I would say that I'm less prone to go into the pantry and raid everything and just eat it. What's crazy is that in my mind, if I'm cheating on carnivore, it's actually extremely clean keto. Like that's what's ridiculous. It's like, for someone that thinks about cheating, I'm only cheating myself if I do it. So I beat myself up on it every single time, regardless. I've just gotten better at what I will allow as a cheat, whether that is a teaspoon of peanut butter. And then I still have this shame, guilt thing about it. And then I'm like, it really wasn't even that satisfying. I wish I had a steak. But in that moment, so I try and write down and think about, what was I feeling at that moment? Was it stress related at work, or was it, I'm trying to, figure out, something with our children, and that was stressful, or, things aren't the 2020s was happening, the whole year has been stressful. It's not been a normal case, and which is crazy because I actually started carnivore in 2020, which sounds like maybe one of the worst times to start something like this during a pandemic. But I actually found an extreme calm in it. I found that I had a sense of control I didn't have before. Growing up where I felt like I had no control over anything, carnivore actually helped to give me some control. So that was very freeing. It was freeing and liberating to know that I can wait, and, so patience and the practice of that, and the practice of listening to your body, and the practice of, being respectful with the food that goes in your body instead of just eating garbage. I guess that's what carnivore has really given me more of a respect for what I'm eating and what I'm doing for myself and what I'm doing for my family. Whereas they're hungry, I've got things to do, let's just get them something. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely it does. And I look at, maybe it's biased or not, but I look at, animal food, meat in particular, as kind of the pinnacle of nutrition. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your bucks. And it tends to be the most primally satisfying, viscerally satisfying to me. And I've got a pretty boring diet. When it comes down to, for the last few months, I get up, eat a dozen eggs, some bacon, some cheese. 4 or 5 hours later, I'll eat a couple pounds of steak, and that's it. That's it for the day. It's about 4,000 calories. I get up in the morning, I walk, I eat my breakfast, I walk, I do a podcast, I do whatever else I'm doing. I exercise. I don't count walking as exercise. When I say exercise, it's some kind of intense weightlifting stuff. And, despite the same thing over and over, day in and day out, some days I'll be like really more hungry than others. And it's just kind of like, what's going on? Did I not? Because normally I'm just like, I'd say 90% of the time, if I hit enough food, I'm good. I can, because I usually shut off my eating by, generally by about 4 p.m., sometimes even by 2 p.m., I'm done eating. And then I just coast till 9, 10 o'clock at night where I go to bed. I usually have no problem at all just making it till then. And that works pretty well for me. I mean, it's you kind of hit the rhythm. And I don't know if there's, when I travel and go out of town, obviously that's a stress, a challenge. When life events happen, there's minor things when things are off by a little bit, it seems that kind of throws a wrinkle into the system. But I find it's pretty easy to stay pretty well under control. And I've always found as long as I get enough, then I'm good. Then I'm not finding myself going, what else do I eat? I'm still kind of hungry here. And I think there's, we look at human physiology and we look at things like ghrelin, which is one of the hormones associated with hunger. We know it has a diurnal sort of signal and it sort of peaks in the evening. That's why so many people, they find themselves, in the evening time, just looking in those cabinets, they're just like, I got to eat something. And that's, once you figure out how to deal with that, it really makes a big difference. And I often will use just fluid volume. It might be ice. Sometimes I'll do this. I'll use these Element electrolyte drinks, and I will just, and some of them have, flavor to them. So some people may not do well with those, but I do fine with them. And I'll throw one of those in about a blender full of ice, and it'll give me a giant bowl. Eat that, and it just knocks that hunger back for maybe an hour, and that's all you need in the evening. I find it's just like I'm able to go to bed, and once it's kind of bedtime, I'm not hungry anymore, and then you wake up in the morning and you generally not hungry. So I find that to be good. Do you find, okay, so let's go back to, I guess, keto and then carnivore. When you first started keto and carnivore, family pushback, mom, dad, or I don't know if you're still in your life, but I mean, your kiddos, your neighbors, your coworkers, any pushback on that and any pushback on carnivore, or have they been generally supportive?
It's been generally supportive. To answer your question, no, my parents are not in my life. I'm very, when I make a decision to cut out negative things, whether that's food, people, whatever, I pretty much stick to it. And so I think it's not necessarily pushback that I get. It's just questions about, well, why can't you eat this? So it turns into a conversation about shifting mindset of not saying negative statements like, oh, you can't eat this. Like, but I can have this, and this is pretty darn good. And so switching that mindset in the conversation where someone's thinking about it from a negative perspective or a deficit of not having life experiences, like, but did that give you so much more excitement or so much more joy versus this? So those are really not really pushback, but conversational situations that come up when there is, questions about keto, questions about carnivore. I get questions of, are you always going to eat like this? Are you ever going to, shift back? I'm like, well, I don't really have a reason to go back. If I feel better and I look better and I'm happier, there's always this question of, when will you ever go back to normal? Well, this is my normal. Like there's that statement. So pushback, my husband, he, in the beginning, he's always been a really big power lifter. He was always, really big, had a lot of size, was always in the gym at least 3 hours a day. He wound up suffering. He ripped his pec one year, and that's actually when he got serious with keto and because he couldn't lift. So it turned into, you no longer need to eat that many carbohydrates as a power lifter to, sustain that size. And he lost over 80 pounds in a 6-month period, and he feels better. He sleeps better. So it turned into, more of a converting effect than an argument effect with family, where they saw the benefits and, they're doing more of that as well. And if we go to a family gathering, I'm still going to bring food. I'm just going to bring a food that's prepared for everyone to enjoy, where it's technically keto and everyone can enjoy it. We don't have to have a casserole for every single event that we get together. There doesn't have to be a bun on everything. I mean, it's completely okay to not eat the bun. So yeah, so socially and familial experience have not been pushed back, just questions. They'll still continue to eat what they want, but they'll still try what I've prepared, and it's not bad. No, it's not.
Yeah, I wonder how humans survived before there was Baskin Robbins 31 flavors and all the variety, and the 75 colors of Gatorade, and the Cool Ranch Doritos, and all this. I mean, how did humans ever make it without all that variety? Because people ask me, well, isn't it boring? I said, well,
No.
there are other things in life besides food you can get value and entertainment from. And if I feel sorry for people whose sole source of entertainment is what they eat, and it's not that. I mean, I immensely enjoy what I eat. I mean, I do. I mean, granted, it looks similar many days, but I mean, I still enjoy the hell out of it. I mean, I'm gonna have two big fat ribeyes here in about 4 hours. They're going to be sous vide and seared perfectly, and a little bit of salt on there. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of them. And I'm actually thinking about it right now, thinking about how good it's going to be.
Yeah, I would say that's what I enjoy. I would say the differences between maybe keto and carnivore for me were, with keto, I felt like I had to have so many different ingredients to try and duplicate or replicate a non-keto food to make it feel like I was tricking the mind to make it feel like it had carbs in it. And there was no sense in that. So I would say that carnivore is just a lot cleaner. It's, taking out all of the extras, but you can still get really adventurous with carnivore. I feel I'm not adventurous in the way that I eat organ meat. I've tried liver before. I did it with Vanessa Spina's bacon liver pate. I still couldn't get over the texture and the smell. My husband actually said, don't you ever make that in this house again, because it stunk like all day long. He's like, I hate that smell. I don't know what you just made, but don't make it again. But like even just like chaffles or, steak and butter gals, egg pudding. There's like so many different varieties of ways to make animal products taste good. So, I mean, you can get as adventurous with it as you want, and it's not boring. I mean, I just think about how many different ways you could eat eggs.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. And poor Dana's saying, well, she wishes she could eat eggs. I wish you could too, Dana. I mean, I guess you could. I mean, I don't know what the effects are for you, but, do you find, so obviously, well, we see this carnivore community is growing. You talked about Kelly Hogan within your hometown. Did you find any kind of, did you find online support initially? Is that where you went to? I mean, did you have a physician have you been to the physician that said, hey, what the hell are you doing? You're crazy, or what's been going on with that side of things?
I've not had a physician that has questioned me or had, strict resistance. I've seen a family medical physician who is, he's Mormon, so they naturally are very restrictive off of lots of sugars and alcohols anyway. So he's like, if your body feels better in this capacity, I'm just going to support you. And the only reason that we'll ever have a conversation is if I see blood work that makes me concerned. But all my blood work has been normal. My cholesterol levels were still normal. I've had zero issues with anything, no sickness this year whatsoever. My menstrual cycle is a lot better than it ever used to be. It's not as painful. So that's a great positive and plus that a lot of women see. Either it returns or it's not as traumatic or, as debilitating sometimes as heating pads and laying in bed for days. So no, I found a lot of support on Instagram. Instagram is where I have the most of my support, I think, community wise. I do have a Facebook group in which I have people who, have followed along just different recipes. And it all started from me just making all of the dishes and all of the recipes that people would see that were keto based. And, telling them this, it could have been, fathead pizza, or it could have been, just different salads or chaffles, whatever. It started from a foodie perspective, a keto foodie perspective, and then it's migrated into that's a good looking steak. And so that's just kind of the support that's been there, cheering everybody on and watching their transformations and seeing that everybody does it a little bit different. And that's totally fine. And, there's no I would say the reason why I brought up earlier fasting as a dirty word, when I said I was fasting, there was someone who I had gotten a couple of people that reached out to me on Instagram and direct messages like, why are you fasting? You know, so-and-so doesn't fast. Why are you doing that? Do they know that you're fasting? I'm like, it's okay. We support each other here and we're trying new things. And it's not like I'm eating a snow cone or ice cream or, you know, a whole cake. I'm just trying a fast. Um, it's one of those ways where I think that people online, when they don't know or they're curious, they tend to put you in a box and think that we all do it the same way. And we don't all do it the same way. Like your caloric expenditure, Shawn, is massive because you work out a lot. So you eat a lot. You're fueling a large body. You are tall. You are a massive man. Like that, you're not fat. But on a BMI, we might look obese, which is a whole nother story. But everyone does it differently. And I think we all have to have respect for everyone's difference in the way that they do carnivore, whether they can do eggs or can't do eggs, whether they can do yolks or whites only, or whether they can do pork or no pork. I think that there's so many different things that we have reactions to. I had a really clean jerky one time that gave me histamine reactions, and I'd never experienced that before. And I think it's just, you don't know until you eliminate so many different foods, and you kind of, when you don't have that much entering the system, you can narrow down exactly what's a problem. And that has been really beneficial. There are so many people that put so much in their body, on their body. Well, it could be cosmetic that they put on there, and they just don't know at the end of the day what's causing their root issues. And so it's freeing from this capacity, watching everybody on Instagram and hearing everyone's journey being different, that there's not one set way, that if it doesn't work for me this way, that I can't find my own way that works.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice message, and I try to take a very simple message and not get too prescriptive, because there's people saying you must do it this way, and if you don't do it this way, you're not optimized. And I just don't think we know that, and I'm very tend to push back against that line of thinking. And I think for some people, obviously, carnivore diet's not the right thing for them. I think I'm still pretty adamant. I think meat is an incredibly important health food and super important for human nutrition. And I think for those who want to do it strictly and just eat that, I think that's also fine. But I mean, you're absolutely right. There's people that are going to have different experiences with different techniques, and that may even change for the actual individual over time. I've seen even in myself. I mean, there was a time when I couldn't eat eggs, Dana. Just to give you some hope, there was probably a year where I was like, eggs just make me feel awful, and the same thing with dairy. And recently, I've gotten to where, I tolerate them a lot better. I don't have the things, because I would get a lot of congestion and probably some inflammation from dairy, and I don't seem to have that to the degree that I have now. Now, I am also not at a point where I'm trying to be super, super lean right now. And you mentioned BMI. My BMI is 30 to 31, depending on what time of the day I weigh myself. And so I'm clinically obese. And then, obviously I would argue I'm not obese, but that is one of the problems with BMI, is that it can underestimate or overestimate your level of fatness. And so we probably do better with a waist to height measurement or something along those lines. It's not that we can't use it as a screening tool, but it's the same thing. I would say, just like some of these, like I would say LDL cholesterol, you could use as a screening tool. You could say, okay, your LDL cholesterol is high. Before we jump to conclusions, let's ask some other questions. Let's ask about the particle type. Let's ask about the oxidized ratio. Let's ask about what setting is it in. What are the triglycerides? What are the HDL? What's the glycemic control? What are the inflammatory markers? What's the blood pressure? What's the what else is going on? I think those things are all important. Some people say, what is your LPPLA2, and so on and so forth. So it's a screening tool. I guess I didn't get into this. What does a day of eating look like for you now? What does your carnivore diet look like? I glanced at your Instagram and I saw a lot of steaks and some eggs and some pizzas, probably, I'm sure, fathead style pizzas and stuff like that, and some dairy, I guess. So what does it look like for you?
And so every day is not exactly the same. Every day I will have coffee. Every day. That's the only thing that's normal for me. Every single day I will have coffee. Some days I put heavy cream. Some days I don't put heavy cream. If I have heavy cream in my coffee, I am not going to have breakfast. I'm just not hungry, obviously, because the fat from the heavy cream is going to sustain me until a lunchtime or dinner time period. I will typically have, I guess it could be what's a good rough week, because I do it based off of sometimes what my husband wants to eat, and then I just make a certain amount based off of that. But it's going to be, we do chuck roast. We do a variety of steak cuts, whether it's New York strip, ribeye, whatever really is on sale. I'll find like a manager special. It could be Aldi ribeyes. I'll do sausage. I love to do bacon. I really like the uncured bacon. There are certain brands that I love. I am a fan of butter on almost everything. Even if there's butter in the broth, like with my chuck roast. And my husband was like, "This is really good." I'm like, "Yeah, it needs butter." But it's just one of those. I like to add salt. I use Redmond salt. I like Element, the electrolytes that you talked about earlier. I love those guys. They're great. I like to have, I don't take supplements in the way of like vitamins, except I will add electrolytes. I'll add my magnesium, my potassium, my sodium. I'll add those in because I'll notice that I'll either not sleep well, or I'll have a headache, or I might be irritated, and that's more of an electrolyte imbalance for me than anything else. I find if I just have salt on my tongue, I'm immediately better. I just feel better. So literally it's ground beef, steak. If I eat chicken, it's not going to be a chicken breast because it's just, I had no idea how boring chicken breast was. Like, that's a boring thing to eat. And I feel like it's just so chewy. Like, there's no fat. So I'm going to have either hot wings or chicken thighs if I'm going to have chicken. That's the only part of the chicken I will eat. Thigh, leg, that's it. Burgers, I'll eat every part of the cow that's on sale except liver. And it's odd in where I grocery shop, I can't find certain things. So grass-fed is not always really available to me in an affordable way. Or if it's grass-fed, it might be grain finished. Because I don't think I've ever found one locally that's 100% grass-fed. So that's not basically the culmination of my diet. I will have dairy every single day, but I won't have it multiple times a day. So if I have it in my coffee, it won't be part of my meals later. But I'm a fan of butter. I'm a fan of the cheeses. I'm a fan of every single meat. We don't eat a lot of fish, I would say. That's a special thing that we do. Maybe once every 2 weeks, it'll be shrimp or salmon. That's about it. Fish is probably the one that we don't eat the most of, but it's predominantly going to be pork and beef, and that's the majority of meat in our house.
Yeah, it's similar to me. I mean, I certainly preference beef, and then I'll have pork, particularly in the form of bacon, and then chicken almost never makes it onto my menu. It's kind of interesting. The consumption of chicken in the U.S. has gone up, just I think fivefold in the last 50 years, whereas beef consumption has gone down about 30%, 30 to 40%, depending on, when you start. I think it's 77 is when we peaked in beef consumption. But, and then seafood I'll do from time to time. In fact, I've got a freezer full of this really nice, sustainably caught, wild seafood. And we've got the proprietors going to come on to the show and one of their chefs to talk about this. I've been waiting to eat that till I can talk to their chef on the best way to prepare that. But I generally, I just generally don't have a great deal of like, wow, I really want some fish. I mean, it's usually an accompaniment. It's usually like in a context of a surf and turf. It'd be like steak with some shrimp, or, if I'm fortunate enough, steak with lobster, or, something like that. It's certainly not going to be the main dish very often, unless I'm like trying to get really, really lean, and I do that just high protein, low fat thing. And that's not sustainable for me. It's just a kind of a transient thing. But yeah, I think there's a reason why, and I've talked about why I think we eat the way we do, or what's appealing to us. And I think it's the fact that, if you think about a prehistoric man, and the technology that was available was largely spear based, and trying to kill a bird with a spear versus a slow moving, elephant or something along those lines. Well, I mean, when I say slow moving, they don't run away. They don't typically run away. That's not their they're not like an antelope where you've got to chase down with a ranged weapon. So much easier way to acquire calories from these big red meat fatty animals than it would be a lean little chicken that can fly. And, it just reminds me of the Rocky scene where he's chasing the chicken around and how fruitless that would be to try to get many calories that way. So
exactly. Yep.
That's why we do that. Well, we've gone through an hour. This has been really fun. So tell us, Ashley, where can people follow you on social media if people wanted to find out more information about you or hook up with you socially, or, I don't know if there's any people. I know Kelly's got a large following in her neck of the woods, and, I don't know if you guys ever do any events and stuff like that, but anyway, where do people find you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is @KetoCarnivoreAshley. And the reason why the keto is still there is because I still support a lot of keto people on Instagram and still cook keto for my husband and my children sometimes. So I'm trying to evolve that. It used to just be Keto Ashley, and that's actually my website, ketoashley.com. If you go to my website, it says I'm a coach. And the way that I think about that is I'm providing resources. I never want to coach anybody for months and months and months and years and years and years. I kind of want to just talk to you over a 30-day period and figure out what's going on, give you some tools and resources, but I never want to coach someone forever because I feel like I'm not giving them all the information, and I'm more of a crutch than a support network. So I think about stuff as accountability. The person you go to when you're about to go into that restaurant, you're scared, or you're going somewhere and you need help and support to kind of get through that situational environment. So yeah, Instagram, my website, and then I do have a Facebook group. If you guys are interested, it's Ketogenic Generation. There are a lot of people that we just share recipes back and forth and support each other and are doing well. But yeah, those are the places where you can find me. Kelly and I did have a meetup scheduled for Statesville, North Carolina, but COVID hit and that kind of went away. We are planning to do a meetup sometime soon. I'm just not sure when or how many we can have, but yeah, just be on the lookout. We'll definitely get together and have a meetup soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And just the one other thing just reminded me of, the going into a restaurant, we're about to roll out our instant coaching thing. So you can get a coach basically instantaneously. So some people, they just need it in the moment. They don't want to wait to schedule for 2 weeks from now. So it'll be kind of fun to see that, like you say, hey, I'm for some people, there's people that are beginning, they're looking at a menu on a restaurant. They don't even know what to order. It's like, how do I make this work? Or they've had some sort of crisis and they need someone to talk to right now to talk them off the ledge. So yeah. Awesome stuff. Well, this has been fun, Ashley. Wish you success. Hopefully, like I said, I think 2021 should be a better year for all of us, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to, and I'm optimistic, looking forward to what's to come. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, folks, and everyone else. We'll see you guys soon, hopefully tomorrow. But anyway, you guys have a great day and good week, and hopefully the rest of the year ends out good for you guys. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.